It wasn't a plan. It was an accident. The moment the world almost ended, the gods weren't angry or vengeful or righteous. They were horrified because they had just realized it was their own damn fault. We search history for the shadows of tyrants, but the oldest stories whisper a more terrifying truth. They tell of 3 moments when the gods themselves, in their infinite wisdom, miscalculated and brought creation to the very edge of the unmaking. These are not tales of mortal folly. This is the case file on cosmic error. We have been taught to fear the wrath of the gods, but the archives of myth reveal we should have been fearing their carelessness. For in 3 forgotten instances, a choice was made in the halls of eternity that nearly guaranteed our oblivion. The question isn't if they erred, but why, and what these divine mistakes reveal about the precarious balance of our own world. The first mistake began not with a bang, but with a spark of pity. Imagine you are standing in the twilight of a nascent world. It is a place of profound cold and shadow. Your people huddle in caves, their lives dictated by the rise and fall of a merciless sun. At night, the true lords of the earth emerge, things with claws and teeth that hunt in the dark. Your existence is a frantic, desperate prayer for the dawn. This is a world without fire. Then, a titan, a being of the old magic, looks down from the peaks of creation and sees your struggle. He sees the shiver in your limbs, the fear in your eyes. And in an act of cosmic rebellion, he steals a single, forbidden ember from the hearth of the gods and brings it down to you. Feel it. For the first time, you feel warmth that is not the sun. You see light that is not the moon. You watch as the predators of the night, who have haunted your every dream, shrink back from this dancing, living light. This isn't a gift, it is a genesis. The chronicles tell us the gods punished the Titan for his transgression, chaining him to a mountain for eternity. But this is where the mortal account ends and the divine truth begins. The punishment wasn't for the theft. It was for the consequences they never foresaw. This was their mistake, the profound underestimation of the seed they had allowed to be planted. The gods watched as the fire to warm your hands became the fire to harden the tip of a spear. They watched as the fire of the cooking pit became the roaring furnace of a forge, where you hammered the earth's bones into tools of creation and weapons of war. They gave you the power to hold back the dark, and you immediately began to create new darknesses of your own. A divine spark meant to nurture became the catalyst for ambition. It burned in your minds, pushing you out of the caves and into villages, then cities, then empires. It was the fire of industry, the fire of invention, the fire that would one day power machines that could shatter mountains. They had given a child a thunderbolt and were now powerless to prevent the coming storm. The world would not be destroyed by divine wrath, they realized, but by the unchecked momentum of a divine gift. The first mistake wasn't the giving of fire, it was the failure to imagine the shadow it would cast. The second mistake was born not of pity, but of fear. After the age of fire and iron, there was a golden age. A celestial kingdom had reached its zenith, a realm so perfect, so balanced, that it was embodied by a single beloved God. He was the Shining One, the God of light and beauty, and his existence guaranteed the order of the cosmos. But with perfect order comes the perfect terror of losing it. A prophecy was whispered in the dark corners of creation, a prophecy that foretold the death of this shining God, an event that would trigger a final, endless winter and the twilight of all things. And here the masters of the universe made their second mistake. They decided to defy fate. His mother, the queen of the gods, in a panic of maternal love, began a grand and impossible quest. She traveled to the 9 realms, from the roots of the world to the shimmering stars, and extracted an oath from every single thing in existence. Imagine her plea. She stood before fire and water, iron and stone, poison and plague, beast and tree, and made them swear a sacred vow. They would never harm her son. And they agreed. The shining god was now invincible. It was the ultimate act of control, of divine will imposed upon the fabric of reality itself. The gods celebrated their victory over destiny. They made a game of it, hurling axes and arrows and boulders at the shining god, laughing as every weapon veered away, refusing to touch him. But why did they go to such extremes? Because of their fear. And why did they fear? Because the prophecy foretold not just a death, but their death. And why did they believe it? Because deep in their immortal hearts, they knew that even gods are just characters in a story whose ending has already been written. This is the turn. The mistake was not the trickster god who found the loophole. The mistake was the hubris of the queen. In her frantic mission to secure an oath from everything, she overlooked the smallest, most harmless of things, a sprig of mistletoe. It was too young, too insignificant to be a threat, she thought. In their arrogant attempt to command reality, they created the one blind spot fate needed. The one thing in all of creation that had not sworn the oath. A weapon was fashioned from that forgotten weed, and in the midst of the gods' laughing game, it was thrown. The silence that followed was heavier than any mountain. The laughter died, and as the shining god fell, the sun flickered in the heavens. For the first time, a cold wind blew through the halls of the gods. The great winter had begun. They had not prevented the prophecy. They had, with their own terrified hands, built the path that led directly to it. They learned that day that fate is not a chain to be broken, but a thread that tightens the more you struggle against it. The third, and perhaps most terrifying mistake, was not born of pity or fear. It was born of annoyance. Picture a world teeming with its first true harvest of humanity. We were loud. Our prayers and our curses, our laughter and our wars, our ceaseless building and unbuilding, the noise of it all rose up into the heavens. It was a constant, grating clamor that disturbed the peace of the divine. To one god in particular, the great king of storms, this noise was an intolerable nuisance. It kept him from his slumber. This cosmic drama did not begin with a judgment of our morality. It began with a headache. So he decided in a fit of cosmic pique to solve the problem. He would wash the world clean. He would bring a great flood to silence the ceaseless noise of humanity once and for all. Other gods protested, but the Storm King's will was absolute. The rains came, the oceans rose, the world drowned, and there was, at last, silence. This is where the story truly begins. As the waters receded, the gods looked down upon a world scrubbed clean of life. It was pristine, it was quiet, and it was empty. In that devastating silence, the gods felt something they had never felt before: hunger. The smoke from mortal altars no longer carried the scent of sacrifice to their halls. The energy from mortal worship no longer fueled their power. The stories that gave them meaning were no longer being told. Their mistake was revealed in an instant of dawning, abject horror. In their haste to silence their creation, they had severed their own lifeline. A god without a believer is just a forgotten name, a whisper on the wind. They had committed an act of cosmic pest control, only to realize they were about to starve to death in their perfect, silent world. When the one boat carrying the last of humanity finally came to rest, its captain built an altar and made a burnt offering. The scent of it, the first prayer in a new world, rose to the heavens. And the ancient texts say the gods, smelling it, swarmed around the smoke like flies, desperate, humbled and ravenous for the very connection they had so arrogantly destroyed. They had nearly annihilated themselves to get a moment's peace. So what are we to make of these three divine errors? The unchecked fire of ambition, the doomed struggle against fate, the petulant rage that destroys its own purpose. They are not three separate events. They are three verses of a single epic poem, a warning about the illusion of control. The gods believed their power made them masters of consequence. They gave us fire to shape the world, grew terrified when we began to shape our own destiny, and in a final frustrated spasm tried to unmake it all, only to nearly unmake themselves. These are not just stories. They are mirrors, because the fire is in our hands now. The power to reshape the very code of life, to build minds from lightning and silicon, to ignite the atom. We now stand where they once stood, wielding powers we are only beginning to comprehend. These ancient myths echo forward as a question for our time. Have we learned the lesson the gods learned too late? That true power is not the ability to act, but the wisdom to foresee. To understand that every gift casts a shadow, every certainty has a blind spot, and that our own survival is inextricably woven into the very things we might be tempted to destroy. The world was nearly broken by the gods. The question is, will we be wise enough not to repeat their mistakes?